Hey folks, welcome back to On Texas Football and welcome back to Football Theory. I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers, pleased to be joined by the newest member of the On Texas Football family, my friend and now my co-worker Jeff Howe. We'll get into the latest antics, should I say, from Texas in the transfer portal. It give it then and take it away, but right now the Longhorns feel like it's giving a whole lot to this 2025 roster. So we'll talk about the latest transfer portal, specifically at one position that the Longhorns have really prioritized and emphasized the last couple of years, actually, in the transfer portal. Before we do that, though, let's thank our fantastic sponsor of Football Theory, the accomplished Austin realtor, Laura Baker. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor, Laura Baker. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. Laura is not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert. So please give her a shout today if you have any concerns or questions regarding real estate in the Austin area. Her number is 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Or you can reach out at Laura at AndyAllenTeam.com. That's Laura at AndyAllenTeam.com. We really appreciate Laura Baker and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. All right, let's dive into it, Jeff. And, I know this is something that you want to get into, and it's mind-blowing to me. Longhorns now, in the last two transfer portal cycles, they have now acquired a total of 5 defensive tackles, the latest being Murad Watson, who is the freshman All-American. I mean, he is a fabulous player. That is in addition to Travis Shaw and Cole Brevard, Levon Johnson. Also, they got in this cycle Hero Canoe, one of the ones they got in the last cycle. Jeff, I mean, looking at it, I mean, last year they ended up getting, 3 D tackles in the transfer portal. Now you're talking about getting 5. First of all, have you ever heard of a program getting 5 D tackles in an offseason, like in a transfer portal, like 2 cycles of it? I mean, that's a lot of focus on one position, man.
Not off the top of my head, because usually if you're recruiting that many guys out of the portal at one position, usually it's not good. But you look at Texas, and it's just one of those deals, Rod, where this is how it worked out, where you had a roster that when the staff got here, they were really young at interior defensive line, and they kind of grew with those guys. That's a credit to the staff, kind of getting what you inherited and developing it. They developed Keandre Coburn and Moro Ajomo and Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy and Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. Now you're at a point where those guys have all graduated and moved on. You go back and look at your 2023 defensive tackle. Well, you really look at 2022, whether it was Jeray Bledsoe or, Zach Swanson, guys that you recruited at that point. A lot of that class didn't pan out. Then you've got your 2023 class, which Sadir Mitchell was the only take you had. He's no longer in the program. And you go to 2024 and you signed 3, but then you had one, DeAndre Robinson, that ends up getting out of his letter of intent when Bo Davis moves on and ends up signing with Florida. It also probably cost you a couple of recruits at the end of that cycle too. So this is just one of those years where there's no middle ground, Rod. You're really young and really inexperienced, so you just needed some veteran bodies. The thing I like about Murad Watson, though, you've got a multi-year guy now on the interior defensive line. You're adding a guy that's got multiple years to go. So, last year, whether it was Norton or Lole, Tia Savea had a couple of years, but Norton and Lole, you knew they were 1-year rentals. At least now you've taken a couple of guys in these 2 halls that have a chance to be around for a minute.
Yeah, they can stabilize it for you, right? Because in Murad Watson, freshman All-American, he'd be around for a couple of years. You got Levon Johnson and Hero Canoe. Yeah, another guy that's got a couple of more years that will allow you to get some of those younger guys and develop them, and hopefully they become big-time contributors for you. Something you brought up, that this is kind of what they inherited, a lot of young guys, and maybe they're foreseeing that if they do give these young guys a chance, yes, they may be good players, but that could be in the future. And you don't want to deal with those kind of growing pains with, what you have on the line if you're Texas. You don't want that to become a fatal flaw. So they're leaving no doubt with the 5 D tackles. All right, so among these guys, let's talk about Murad Watson among them. I think he's maybe your best run stopper as he walks on campus at D tackle position.
Yeah, I think he and Cole Brevard probably are the 2 guys that you look at. You start looking at the Pro Football Focus grades, and look, I know PFF, I say this all the time, Rod. You hear me say it. It's not the be-all, end-all, but it's a lot better than what we used to have, which was nothing. So you take it with for whatever you think it's worth. But you look at his grade as a run defender, as a freshman in a power conference, playing for Syracuse. I mean, you look at the teams they play against. They play against Georgia Tech, NC State, Pitt, Virginia Tech, Miami. So they played Washington State in their bowl game. So they're playing some really good competition. He had a run defense grade of 77.4. Now anything above a 70 is considered above average. So that tells you he's a plus run defender. So again, I think he and Cole Brevard right away are going to be the guys that you look at. Hey, first and foremost, they're going to stop the run. And you know what I like, Rod, in addition to multiple years of eligibility, this guy doesn't just have experience just in terms of, he played in X number of games. No, you look at the snap numbers. He played almost 500 snaps last year, 493. If you look at the Texas roster, even in 16 games, only interior defensive lineman at Texas that played more snaps than Rod Watson did last year at Syracuse. Alfred Collins at 593 and Vernon Broughton at 588. He would have had the third most snaps if you put his snaps up against all the other interior defensive linemen Texas had. Now, Jermaine Lole, I think, was probably like 30 snaps away from him. And then, you go a little further down at Bill Norton. But like Alex January, Rod, this is why you needed to get 5 defensive tackles. And we've heard good things about Alex January this spring. Yeah. He's had a really good spring. Don't take that away from him at all. But you start looking at snap numbers, and Alex January only played 94 snaps last year. So again, a guy that I think the coaching staff really believes in him. Again, we've heard good things, but are you going to ask him to, hey, you only played 94 snaps, now go out and play, 60-something, 70-something snaps against Ohio State? You're not going to ask him to do that.
Yeah, and they usually narrow the D tackle, the bulk of the rotation down to 4 guys, right? That's usually how it is. And they
pretty much, yeah.
Pretty much ends up being that, right?
If you look at last year, like I said, Collins with 593, and again, these are just Pro Football Focus snap totals. Collins at 593, Broughton at 588. You got Jermaine Lole at 469, and then the gap is down to Bill Norton at 260, and then you've got January at 94, and Sadir Mitchell's in there at 36, and
they were
so there's a pretty big gap, but basically. It's pretty much 4 guys, 4 to 5 guys is how deep that rotation is going to be.
Yeah, because when you're deep, I think they went when they got to the point where, in 2023, all right, when they had Sweat, then Murphy, and then Collins and Broughton, and they felt like, man, we're deep. We're gonna go 4, and we'll rotate those guys. And I think that's what they ultimately want. I think they want to be at 4. They talked about wanting to play like that. I think ultimately they want 4 D tackles. They feel like, oh, these guys are starting caliber players. And the truth is, you brought out of the 5 guys you brought in the last 2 cycles, 3 of them basically were projected starters or projected starters for their teams in returning starters or projected starters for their teams in the upcoming 2025 season. So you already brought in guys who are considered starters. If you could develop, I think Alex January is that guy. Into being somebody else you consider a starter caliber player. You got 4. Did they just turn this position into a strength again?
I'm not gonna say it's a strength, Rod, but I don't think I'm breaking any news here. I feel a heck of a lot better now that law of averages says a couple of these guys are going to hit. I think the other thing too there's a couple of things that as this development of this defensive tackle position has gone on, there's a few things I'm realizing. One is, and Bobby Burton's mentioned this in some notes, and we got some notes over at ontexasfootball.com that everybody should probably check out, some pretty in-depth notes on the defense. Travis Shaw has been kind of in and out. He's been dealing with a knee problem that he dealt with it last year at North Carolina. He's been dealing with it this spring. Sark has even talked about they've tried to manage his reps. If that's something that's going to linger, does Travis Shaw now become less of kind of an every down guy that maybe we thought he was going to be? And the health situation is going to relegate him to being a situational guy. If that's the case, then you needed another veteran defensive tackle because you got to find those snaps somewhere. So is Travis Shaw, he's capable of being an every down guy, but again, Rod, is the health going to make him kind of more of like what Bill Norton was? Maybe not the same role, but the same kind of snap numbers where there's going to just be certain situations where Travis Shaw plays, and you're going to have to really be measured in how you give him snaps and where you do it. And maybe, look, it could be a deal where non-conference, maybe you just give him, and again, this is assuming that the knee lingers, and maybe it doesn't, but in worst case scenario, maybe those last 3 non-conference games after Ohio State, maybe you only give him 10 to 12 snaps a game just so he can, kind of work up a good lather and then get out of there. And then you can let, a Murad Watson, a Josiah Sharma, a Myron Charles, even a Justice Terry, you can let those younger guys get some snaps. So Travis Shaw's health, Rod, I think that may be either it's a bigger deal than we should have been making a bigger deal out of it as Sark was, or this is Sark not taking any precautions saying, hey, if Travis Shaw can't go or is limited, we can't have our entire defensive front impacted by that. Let's go out and get another body.
Yeah, no, you're right. And yeah, I mean, I'm with you in terms of an every down D tackle. They've done a great job of developing those types of D tackles the last couple of years here under Sark and PK. I think right now, Brevard is probably the closest to it. Even the Murad Watson is awesome against the run, man. He really is a force against the run. He's not his pass rushing skill set not refined yet, but he's just a baby. You can see he started trending those snaps you talked about. They really paid off later in the season. That's when he really started to become a wrecking ball. He was, if you go look at his 15 stops, by the way, which is really impressive. A stop is categorized as a failure for the offense. So he had 15 of those. Half of them, or more than half, 8 of the 15 came in the last 5 games. So that's when he really started to take off as a player. I think, you could turn him into a guy that could provide pass rush if you need it on later downs. But the beauty of what Texas is doing now, I think they are going to manufacture pressure on the passing downs. NASCAR package is a big part of that. I think you'll get some specialized packages with that. That's why they're moving Trey Moore around and Brad Spence and all these guys. So I don't know if they're going to necessarily need these guys to, be every down play. It's going to be great. You want those kind of guys. But I'm telling you, on those later downs or predictable passing downs, you're going to get the NASCAR and you're going to get, I think, some exotics that'll help them manufacture pressure or maximize Colin Simmons and Trey Moore and Anthony Hill and those kind of guys.
Yeah, to that point, that was the other thing, Rod, that I was going to bring up is we've made, and I even said it, hey, if Texas went out and got another interior defensive lineman, a disruptor, it would have been nice to see them get a disruptor, a guy that can be a penetrator and get up the field.
Yep.
But, it doesn't sound like Sark is just based on the takes that they're really concerned with getting pass rush from the interior. And I thought CJ asked Sark a really good question. I just asked him in general about the edge group, and Sark gave him a really good answer on Tuesday. And like you said, he mentioned, hey, we can use Anthony Hill out there. You can use Brad Spence out there. You're moving Trey Moore around. You still got Colin Simmons and Ethan Burke. And Zeno Mazulu is going to be ready at some point. And you're going to get Colton Vasek back at some point. So you've got enough pass rush with the linebackers and edge guys that you have. I don't think they're too worried, Rod, about getting it from the interior because the presence of some of those edge guys, namely Colin Simmons, you're going to free up those guys enough in one-on-one opportunities on passing downs that'll all work itself out. I think this is Sark and PK saying we need to make sure first and foremost that we're really good against the run. We need to earn the right to rush the passer on first and second down. And the best way we're going to do that is by having, maybe you don't have, a guy that's an Outland Trophy finalist or an All-American. Maybe this is a year where you don't have that, but you've got a deep enough rotation where the next best thing, if you're in the fourth quarter of a tight SEC game, if you're in the fourth quarter in Gainesville or Athens or at the Cotton Bowl, and you're still running defensive tackles out there that are relatively fresh, Rod, the psychological issues that presents to offensive linemen. You've been blocking your tail off for 4 quarters. You played 60-something, 70-something snaps. And this cat across from me, he's as fresh as he was getting off the bus pretty much because he's only played 10 snaps so far.
Mm-hmm.
That can be the best weapon you've got if you don't have a bona fide war daddy, is just strengthen numbers. And we talked about it, it's been a 4 or 5 man rotation. Maybe it's 6 or 7. Maybe just the rotation is bigger. Kind of like we talked about receiver in some previous years. You may just have the numbers, and I don't think it's because of an abundance of talent. I just think because you've got unique guys and unique parts of their career, maybe you just have a bigger rotation and get guys more snaps and then figure out in crunch time, all right, here's who the hot hands are. This is who we need on the field in the situation.
Yeah, I once asked Kendra Coburn what's kind of the secret to you guys playing so well? You guys have elevated your play, and he basically said the platooning that they fresh, and he said that that guys are, when they get those reps, they're hungry for them because they're spreading them out over a lot of guys, and you got to make an impact when you're in there as a player. And he said mentally and psychologically, it actually played a role in how they competed against one another in there, like trying to make the most of those reps. So that D tackle room, man, it's trending toward being a strength in 26 because they're bringing in underclass. 26, it's trending toward being a strength, and they had pressure up the middle. They had that in 23, and it never. Well, not never. It didn't convert as many splash plays and sacks and negative plays. And last year they had the edge pressure, and they realized no, the edge pressure is more effective. And I've talked to D-line coaches, and and they say, yeah, you rather have the edge pressure than if you could choose one, the edge pressure is what you rather have because it converts into splash plays in terms of collapsing the pocket, that kind of stuff. So I think Texas now, in Sark's mind, he's like, no, I'm fine. I just give me guys that can stop the run, and we'll get the pressure. I recruited those kind of twitchy guys on the outside.
I mean, if you got Aaron Donald, it's great, right?
Yeah.
Or Roddy,
a
guy that you played with in the NFL. Warren Sapp was one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles we've seen. Yeah. If you got one of those guys, great. But there's a reason why there's only been a handful of those guys in the history of the game, right? They just don't come along very often. But going back to your point about Coburn, because I talked to him a lot about it that year. Moro Jomo talked about it, and even Sweat and Murphy talked about the impact that defensive line rotation had. It really does two things for guys. One, it really puts in your mind there's no reason why when I get my reps, I shouldn't go as hard as humanly possible because I'm not going to be out here that long. In the same vein, I need to make the most out of these reps because if I have a bad play, I may not get another one. They might just decide for the rest of this game, hey, we're going to give your snaps to, Joe Swift here because he's got the hot end. He's making an impact, and you can't bust a grape, so you'll live to fight another day. But I'm giving your snaps to this guy. So it creates kind of that internal competition, and guys, we saw it, man. Guys just played harder. You get more per snap production doing it that way. Now you can't do that every year. But that 2022 defensive line was kind of the perfect storm to have that happen where you had enough guys that they weren't quite as far along in their development. Talking about the younger guys, Sweat, Murphy, Collins, Broughton, they weren't far enough along to where they were complete defensive tackles. But in spurts and situationally, you could give them 3 snaps here, 5 snaps here, 2 snaps here, goal line package, this guy goes in. And I think the other thing, Rod, we've talked about Bo Davis, kind of his style was really coaching to stop the run. Everything Bo Davis did was about stopping the run and being a really good run defender. I think, too, this is Sark trusting Kenny Baker because I think Kenny Baker is a really good pass rush coach. I think this is Sark trusting Kenny Baker. You know what? We're not going to worry about getting kind of a quote-unquote proven pass rusher. They look at a Murad Watson or a Cole Brevard or an Alex January in year 2 with Kenny Baker saying, we trust Coach Baker and we trust the tools that we have. We're going to get some pass rush. So, in other words, they're counting on, hey, this is the best Murad Watson's going to be a much improved pass rusher. And this will be the best that Hero Canoe and Cole Brevard and Travis Shaw, this will be the best they've ever rushed a passer because they've got a really good pass rush coach coaching them how to do it.
Yeah, no, it's a good point about that. And, man, D tackle, 3 years now expected in a row. Texas will have 2 D tackles drafted. That's a pretty damn good stretch. That's an impressive stretch. I got to look around the country and find out how many teams have had multiple defensive tackles drafted 3 years in a row, which will be this year. I'm sure it's probably Ohio State and Georgia and some teams like that. But my point is, that's an exclusive group.
Yeah,
to be able to do that. All right, but good stuff there, Jay. Let's thank our sponsor once again, the accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. Really appreciate her and her team for being a part of our team here at On Texas Football. Trust me, folks. Football Theory brought to you by accomplished Austin realtor Laura Baker. And trust me, you have any concerns or any questions about real estate in the Austin area, she should be your first call. Laura and the Andy Allen team at Keller Williams can handle all of your real estate needs in the Austin area. She's not only a diehard Longhorn fan, but a longtime Austin real estate expert as well. So please give her a shout today, 512-784-0505. That's 512-784-0505. Or you can reach out to her at Laura@AndyAllenTeam.com. Really appreciate her support of football theory, and really appreciate Jeff as well. Thanks, Jeff, for all of the expertise and the nuggets. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes as well, always twisting, tweaking dials. He is the real MVP. And for Jeff and for Matthew and for accomplished Austin Real, to Laura Baker. Until next time, I'm Lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Hook 'em horns.